date that we're living in from now?
August 3rd. Yes, it will. In perpetuity.
Joyce, the guy at Loudon told me to tell you hi yesterday.
I missed you. What?
I went to Loudon yesterday.
Oh, hell. All right. Good afternoon. I would like to call this special called meeting of the Oldham County Board of Education to order. It's August 3rd, 2020, and we are at the Arvin Education Center. The first item of business, Superintendent, is to approve the agenda. Do you have any corrections or additions for us, sir?
No, ma'am. The agenda is correct.
Motion to approve the agenda. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. I'd like to remind everybody who is present for this board meeting that we are nicely spaced at 6 feet or greater, so feel free to take off your face masks if you would be more comfortable doing that. Superintendent, we have a consent item.
We didn't have.
Oh, for goodness sakes. So, Mr. Deebs, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well done, Mr. Deebs. Thank you. Now we are going to move to our consent item. Superintendent, is there anything you would like to make us aware of, sir?
No, everything's in your packet. Mr. Bohannon is here if needed, but if not, I would just recommend we approve that consent item.
Questions or concerns? Motion to approve consent item A, made by Mrs. Hunley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. We are ready, Superintendent, for report number 1 to the board.
So Mr. Deebs will be explaining what we've now come to. We've looked at the numbers. Obviously, DLA is drawing several students off, but our numbers at the middle school and high school were still too large for us to feel comfortable in the situation that we find ourselves in with COVID. And so we had been talking about an AB schedule pretty much all summer long, and had thought about the pros and the cons of it. And like every decision that we make does have pros and does have cons. But we felt like this was the time to introduce this concept so that we can possibly keep our numbers lower and thus make the risk mitigation better.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Deebs.
Hey, thank you. So we're going to kind of walk through the scenarios and give you guys time to ask questions. I'm going to use a little bit of a presentation we used with secondary folk, and then even discuss with elementary principals after we talked with secondary administration and central office on that piece of it. So I'm going to kind of just jump back and forth and kind of get going from there.
Thank you.
So basically we know there's 2 types of enrollments this year. There's going to be a virtual enrollment, which Mr. Schultz just talked about, that is growing in numbers, both at both levels, but definitely carrying a larger load at the elementary level. And then there will also be the same thing for the secondary 6 through 12. Then we have in-person enrollment, and what we're proposing is our in-person enrollment basically will have 3 different types of instructional delivery throughout the year. And there's no telling when you're going to be in one of those 3. So the first one is full 100% capacity. That is all kids, 5 days a week, meeting all their classes based on their individual school schedules within the school day. The second would be a 50% capacity, and then the third, of course, would be NTI, which really isn't in person per se, but it would encompass the people who are enrolled in in-person instruction during the first trimester, second or third trimester, given the time of year we're in. It's also something that we feel like any of those 3 could possibly happen at any given time. It's just going to be, that it's almost, you hear certain words so much you kind of lose faith in them, or you just are tired from hearing them. And like the word transparency and fluency and some of those, it's just like, wow. But I'm really looking at this. This is going to be an ocean current. It's going to be coming and going. And we're just going to have to ride that, but also make it the best we can and catch the best learning waves that we can along the way. So trying to look at it from a positive standpoint on however we go from that piece of it. So again, NTI, we're going to ask that we kind of put some parameters around it. And the reason we put parameters around all three of those is so that we can do a little bit of planning and give parents and teachers a little bit of, hey, here's where we're going next, here's where we're at now, so that it's not something that just is indefinite, that we're just going to do. We're going to always reevaluate. And so we're asking for that to be on a 3-week cycle. Could be pushed to a 4, but I think a 3-week cycle makes sense, saying we would evaluate every 2 weeks and say, do we need to go further or do we need to go to something else on that piece of it. It could be the entire P through 12 experience that could go to NTI on any given day or week based on multiple different situations, based on government, based on Mr. Schultz, talking through, looking at what Oldham County Health Department's saying, and numbers like that. We could also, if we needed to, we could do NTI by individual classroom or individual schools. So if a school has an issue, we could do that and still have some in-person instruction in other places, and that is okay. With the attendance regs changing and stuff, the participation will help with that. Majority of the staff could report to buildings if they wanted to. They wouldn't be required to. But as long as buildings aren't closed like they were at the end of the year, staff could come in and use the technology and resources in the room to help provide the instruction. They would not have to do that. We've even talked about if they wanted to come in and bring their own kids in and isolate them in their own room, they could work through that piece as well to help with that NTI piece. Students would complete work that their teachers assign them, and then we would follow the NTI handbook that I know the SLD team has put together to try to put some also parameters and expectations for staff and students and parents to help guide us through that work that we didn't have last year that we built on to make it better. We know it's not ideal, but we may be forced to do it. Nobody says NTI is ideal, I don't think, but we could be forced to do it and just be expecting that probably sometime this year the way things are looking, okay? Questions on NTI?
Yes.
Yes.
If we have to go to NTI, how would it affect the after-school extracurricular activities, sports and what have you? Because if it shuts all the schools down, or does it shut, if it shuts the one, how would it affect that?
So last year, they shut down the whole big realm, and there was no athletics or anything. They shut down buildings and practice. Currently, they're saying that you can still do certain extracurriculars based on local input. KHSA is saying you can do it, as well as other non-athletic events, and we still have practices going on, and we can look at those case by case or school by school. So what does NTI mean for that? It means that kids can maybe come back and do that piece. Remember, virtual students and in-person students can both participate in extracurriculars and co-curriculars. And so every little group is kind of tweaking and making their changes based on need. You know, we just changed a little bit for the cross-country, and we moved it from 10 to 20, just because of the nature of that sport compared to another sport. Band and KMEA had their own piece, and they've been going through their summer practice, and they've changed routines, and they've gone from, I'm going to say, a 3-step to a 4-step intervals and all that. So each individual group has worked through how they can make those work.
Mr. Kehoe.
Your third bullet point there, when you said individual classrooms, could you expand on that?
Yeah, basically, you know, staffing, there could be a whole bunch of other issues. Maybe we have a teacher who has to be out for a little bit. Maybe we have a group of students that need to be out in the whole room because they were doing experiments or the mask, and that would come from the health department. But we said, you know, you could isolate into a room versus a whole school if we had to go NTI. And NTI at that point might only be for a day, 2 days, or 3 days. It doesn't have to be a long three-week period. The 3-week period would last for the entire district if they went out on an NTI plan.
Thank you.
Good question. Mr. Woosley.
And I'm going to ask this for each of these plans, but can you tell us what this looks like for students with IEP or 504 plans, the ARVN students and AP students on NTI, and then 50%?
All right, so there's a bunch of other smarter people around the room than me on that piece of it. I do know that the plan is to provide services for all groups, no matter virtual or NTI in person, and it will look different based on individual needs along the continuum. So,
Well, why don't we, because we do have some of those experts in the room.
Yes.
let's start with Ms. Whitaker. She is our DOS, and she can talk a little bit about special ed and what this looks like.
Will you join us at the microphone, Ms. Whitaker?
Do you want to do each one, do NTI and then go into AB and then full?
So for those of you who have not met Nikki Whitaker, she is our new Department of Special...
She's Director of Special Education.
Director of Special Education. Miss Nikki, welcome. I'm not sure you're smarter than Mr. Deeves, but you might be as smart as Mr. Deeves.
Just a specialty.
Welcome. So can you address that for us?
Yes, so we fully intend to implement services for every student with an IEP. Now, in NTI, that will look a little bit different because that is going to be held on a virtual platform if we are forced to go into NTI. We have worked with our compliance coordinator to create a document that our teachers will use to work with parents about their experience last year and what worked for those students and what didn't work for those students. And we will build that NTI plan specifically for the individual child, taking into account where their strengths are, where their needs are, and we'll build it from there. Now, did you also have questions about?
I do have one follow-up.
Okay.
There are some students who won't be able to do that virtually. What's the plans for those kids if we went 100% NTI?
So if we're forced into NTI, if we're not able to open the buildings, virtual is the only format.
But if, the difference between, I think everybody's kind of got their mindset on what NTI was last year when it was a complete shutdown by the governor, and understand that, we were not allowed in the buildings. This may be a situation where we're NTI because of maybe the staff that's quarantined or something of that nature, and we just don't have enough adult bodies to handle the building. Those students could come in, and we've already had conversations with all of our GAP groups as far as how could we get those students, if need be, back into the buildings to get services that they need if we're not under a complete lockdown. Because our buses are still going to run, our school food service is still going to be operating. As long as we are not shut out of our buildings as we were in the spring, we have ways to try to adjust and adapt to those things.
Yes, sorry, I
That
was
answered your question,
referencing
Mr.
a
Woosley.
complete shutdown for NTI.
Thank you.
Right. So stay tuned, Ms. Whitaker, and we'll proceed with the presentation.
So,
Thank you.
did you want to hear from, because in the room tonight, we've got Ms. Abernathy, who's a 504 coordinator. Behind me, I've got Ms. Frazier, the GT coordinator, and Mr. Johnson, the EEL coordinator. Those are our identified GAP directors. Would you like to hear from them?
I would, yes.
So I want to ask Melissa if you'll come up.
Okay, Superintendent, let me ask Mr. Woosley, would you like for them to address those special populations across the board, what it will look like if we go to AB also, or stick with the NTI subject now, and then they're going to be up and down, Mr. Woosley?
Yeah, we can do it all while they're up here.
If you can hit those two highlights.
Do you want me to finish the other presentation real quick and then bring them up individually?
I think that makes more sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. The second one is School as We Know It, and that's 100% capacity. We're going to run that on a 4-week cycle as well. The 4-week cycle would also help us know if we need to go into NTI or not, so we can always adjust where we need to make movements from there. It would be a P12. Students report to school as follows. Students get their daily teacher and support staff help every day. Ideally, classes would be between 20 and 35, and that's what our reality is right now. Majority of our classes fall between that, P through 12. We do know that we do have a couple larger classes when you get into band and PE and choir, but the majority are up to about 35 with 3 to 6 classes a day. And then it would also help us ensure that we have full revenue coming in for some of our revenue generating areas such as food service and enrichment centers and after school care.
Excellent.
That's just our traditional
School.
setting. Questions on that one? All right, the new part and the bigger proposal now is the 50% capacity. That's the AB based on in-person enrollment at the time. We would also run this on a 4-week cycle. It would be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule. So every other Friday you would go to class. So if you're on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the second week you would go Monday, Wednesday. The first week, if you're on a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you would go Tuesday, Thursday, off Friday, then the next week you go Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So basically, you're getting 5 in-person instructional days every 2 weeks, and you're getting 5 at-home instructional days. They're not off days, they're at-home instructional days, and that's a big difference on that piece of it. With that, we would only, right now, we're recommending to do that 6/12, unless we get a big influx or change after the first trimester of virtual students, and there could be a possibility that we maybe would have to do that for elementary students. The reason I'm saying that is if we still need to be on that reduced schedule and we're still trying to keep our class sizes down to 20, if you get that large influx, I'm just throwing the possibility that you could have to say we need to look at elementary doing that as well. And they would be on the same schedule as their households. I'm on that piece. Students would be split by household per a computer algorithm that is definitely much smarter than me, that you put in the computer, and it actually breaks the households down not only by school, by grade level, but also by subject and by class. So you get a much cleaner split than just saying A through L, A through M across the district. And so you would just be assigned your household as an A group. So if it's a split that because of a remarriage or something else, or just multiple families living in it, everybody in that household would go to school at the same time. I'm on that piece. We would not split households. We would also, this would be our way in and out of NTI. So one of the big questions we hear a lot, and I know Mr. Schultz pushes on us, is how do we get out of NTI? How do we make sure that we can go from no students in the building to 100% students in the building? Well, we think the answer is don't ever go from NTI to 100% capacity. Always stair step into it, out of it. So that would then give us time in the building with 50% capacity every other day for 6 through 12. I'm on that piece of it. The reason not for elementary is you still have your class sizes at 20 or lower, ideally. You could also stair step into an NTI, start on something with an AB schedule. If it's going well, continue it to go full, but if all of a sudden you have an uptick, you could then go to your NTI for 3 weeks, reevaluate, and then come back out into an AB schedule. So it doesn't mean you got to go full or not on that piece. Staff would report 5 days a week. So at the elementary, you're still only having contact with the 20 kids daily. And secondary, you would have contact with only the 20 kids per class period daily, but you would have more contact over the week. You would still see all your students over a week, and that's just the reality and the difference between a secondary teacher and an elementary teacher on that piece. Ideally, all classes across the district would be right around 20. Some might jump to 21, and some might be 15 or 16. So just knowing we're looking at that. The good thing is students would still get teacher and staff support at least every other day, or if you had that Tuesday, Thursday, it might be the third instructional day off, but you would come back and get them on a Monday or a Tuesday.
If I could add one caveat here, we have weeks up there, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. Those are target dates. Obviously, this is going to be a very fluid year, and so I would hate for anybody to call me 4 weeks in on doing anything and say, hey, we're supposed to switch tomorrow, because it really will depend on how things are going. This is one of those things that as much as we'd like to be everybody, I've had staff say, hey, I want to be back 100%. I've had staff say, hey, 50% is really working really well, but the safe option right now, the most risk mitigated is at 50%, and we may be in that for a while. It really just depends on community spread, what happens in our schools, and everything else. I just want to be very clear that even though we're saying it's a 4-week chunk to look at and we evaluate, but we may be on one or more of these for longer stretches of time, but those are our evaluation periods.
So
Excellent.
the next slide has some talking points that might help either trigger some more questions or answer some questions.
Yes, Mr. Deves, I have a couple of questions. The information has gone out to our parent community and our staff.
Yes.
Who know that we are considering this tonight. Some of the feedback we have gotten is the Monday, Wednesday, every other Friday written in stone? That seems to complicate matters for our families. Is that the best alternative rather than a Monday, Tuesday for the A group and a Wednesday, Thursday for the B group? I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's the best. I'm not going to say it's the worst. To me, when we were trying to talk about it and look at it, is how could we try to get more substantial and even out the touch periods so you don't have longer gaps between not being in school and that piece of it. We felt like because we were going to follow the schedule, you would still have the planning periods for staff. A lot of schools are saying, hey, you might not have planning periods, and so we're going to give you a all-day Friday to do a teacher work day or something like that. So by still following the schedule, staff would still have planning periods and so forth. The other piece is if you go on Monday, Tuesday, then that means you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You'd have 5 days without touching an adult per se. So the every other day also then we felt like would help with giving assignments. You wouldn't give a 2 or 3 day assignment to a student. You would have class on Monday, they would get the assignment for Tuesday, do it at home on Tuesday and be able to bring it back and get feedback right then on Wednesday.
Yes.
If you took it on Tuesday, get the assignment, do the work on Wednesday, you bring it back, you get feedback. If you did the Monday, Tuesday, you wouldn't get feedback until the next Monday, which would be a 5-day period.
Yes.
So
I completely agree and understand. I asked that question on behalf of others that have asked the question to board members. And I forgot my second question.
Well,
Are there
if I
other-
could tag on
Yes,
to
sir.
that, so another strong reason for this, if you want to talk a little bit about school food service, Mr. Deeves?
Yeah, so we have permission now that, an A-B schedule will hurt food service revenue. We know that because you're only going to have half the students coming through when it's a revenue generation. But what we can do on that is, on Monday, as we feed the students in the building, we can also give them their food for Tuesday. So they get 2 days in one and they take it home. And then we're not going to do deliveries. The same thing with the kids who Tuesday, you can do that. So if you come on Thursday and you decide, hey, I need food until the next Tuesday, you could get Friday and Monday's meal right then and there on your off Friday. So we can work with kids being able to take that food home and still deal with the food insecurities that we talked about last time in the meeting of how many kids need the food service and that piece of it.
Yes.
So that helps a little bit.
Excellent.
It also, the transportation, we're going to run the same routes every day, and it gets in a routine that way too.
Yes, excellent. Other questions, board members? Mr. Woosley?
Do you feel you have enough staff to do a deep clean? This is going to cause a deep clean every single day because you're going to have a different group of kids in the buildings the next day. So do you feel like you have enough staff to do a deep clean every day instead of,
So I don't
say
want
if they were off on
to
Wednesdays?
speak for Mr. Bohannon, but my assumption is every evening we would do we would sanitize the entire building, regardless of it's the same students or not. So we feel like we have that with the sprayers and we do that, it's not a deep clean before, but now we have the sprayers and stuff, you're going to get that. So I don't see that as being an issue staff-wise, and like I said, I don't want to speak for Mr. Bohannon on that piece. But
I think Mr. Bohannon shares that sentiment. Good question, Mr. Woosley, because that's another concern folks have asked us. I did think of my second question, Mr. Deeves, and that is we send A student kids home with their work to do on Tuesday. They've come to school on Monday. They're working at home on Tuesday. Will our teachers have any contact with that group of kids on Tuesday? Will they have some office hours, or will there be ways for our students to reach their teachers on those
Yeah.
off days?
Teachers will have a planning period, but I won't sit here and say it's going to be like an NTI, you can just dial them up and get feedback. Because they're going to have another group of 15
Sure.
during that class period going.
Sure.
Now, could they do an email and have time to answer? But I'm not going to sit here and say that every teacher will be able to answer that on a given day. Could they do their planning period piece? Yes. But I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to look like an NTI or a virtual. I'm doing work, I'm just going to automatically ask my teacher for that question.
Right. I don't expect you to be able to speak for all of our teachers, but I would suggest that would be an excellent idea for our teachers to avail themselves to their students on those in-between days when a group's not in school. Yeah, for some support. Other questions?
So a couple talking points just
Yes.
I want to put as much out there as we can, as what we've talked about as well. Majority of classes district-wide at that point would be 20 to 1 or less per period, or for the day for elementary. It'd be a little bit higher if we went, of course it'd be higher if we went to 100%. That would help us with some of our logistics of like temperature checks. On an AB day, you would cut your temperature line and check in half. So a school of 1,700, you're right there going to be about 750, 800. It just really helps with that piece of it. Also, smaller numbers during hall breaks, lunchrooms, and bus rides at the secondary level. And because VLA is pulling so much from elementary, you get the same benefit without being on an AB with the VLA for the in-person piece that way. Revenue will be down for food service, so we might have to help them for the employment piece, just giving you guys a heads up on that piece. Logistics will need to be worked out for ECE, EL, and other special populations, and I believe they can talk to you about that piece of it. Staff will report to work 5 days a week on both the 50 and 100% schedules. It might help retain some staff and some subs coming, knowing that they're going to have smaller classes on a given day. Again, it's over the course of a week, it's still more student contact, but during the day. Buses would remain on routes and close to 50%. And then after school activities, students would have to come back to school if they want to participate on their off days. They'd have to find transportation back for that piece of it.
Yes.
So those are just some of the highlights and talking points, pros and cons of NTI 100% or 50% capacity.
Before we invite our special staff members to join us, let me ask a question, Ms. Hunley.
Yes. Brent, can you go into detail a little bit about why you chose 6 through 12 versus lumping elementary schools in with them on the AB? Because I think a lot of parents have a question about why is this good enough for 6 through 12 and not on the elementary side? Why weren't they included?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. One is we felt like daily instruction needed to happen for the K through 5. We also felt like parents, even though sometimes you could have a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader not mature enough to watch themselves, and a 6th grader who's very mature and can watch themselves, but we felt like the 6 through 12, you could leave their students at home every other day, and they still have their work. It's not just an off day. The K through 5, we felt like the ultimate goal was to try to reduce class size, and with the numbers of VLA, they have done that. And so the AB, you don't gain as much because we're saying that, 16 to 21 range is going to be there even if we go to the full capacity because VLA pulled so many. That's not the same answer for secondary. We wouldn't have pulled as many from VLA, but the VLA and the AB help us get those numbers way down at the secondary. We also felt like, we understand community. They want to get back to work, and they're trying to do that, and we felt like we couldn't do that if we're pulling the elementary students back and forth every other day or every other week on that piece.
Good question, Ms. Hunley. Other questions? All right, let's invite Ms. Whitaker. Would you rejoin us and be able to address how we're going to meet the needs of your special population with, say, the AB schedule?
So on an AB schedule, our students are still able to get service minutes within the traditional classroom as they always have. Now, on their off days, they will be sent home with work from their classroom teacher. Those assignments will be modified and accommodated by their special education caseload manager before they go home for that day. So they will have that support as well.
Excellent. Did that answer your question, Mr. Woosley?
I just feel like we're going to lose some of those students because they're not able to do that virtually. And I don't know what that answer looks like.
That wouldn't be virtually. That's going to be in-person instruction on an AB schedule. So they will still have that person on their scheduled days to be there, as well as the assignment explained to them and those accommodations and modifications made to make them be independent in that work.
I understand that, but you still got 2 days a week that those kids aren't going to be in school, that they're going to be expected to do this at home. Some of those with parents, some maybe not without parents. So I can't wrap my head around what that looks like.
Yes. So, but there are supports in place for them, and they will.
What type of supports?
So the modifications to the assignment, so they would go through that assignment with their special education teacher before they left for that day to address any concerns or questions they might have, as well as that material being modified as needed individually by that student.
Okay. Seems like a lot of work for our teachers.
It is, but they work hard all the time, so it's not anything they're not used to.
Well, and just to that point, there's not going to be a minute this year that a teacher's not working exceptionally harder than ever before, no matter what we do. Because, I mean, they'll be monitoring their own mask wearing, other students' mask wearing, they'll be keeping their seating charts, things that we traditionally sometimes did not have to do or wouldn't do, we have to do just to remain in a safe situation where risk is mitigated. So, I mean, this is a big ask. Whenever I talk to staff, I keep telling them, I understand this is a big lift. It doesn't matter what they do. Anything, any of these things, NTI is a big lift to do it. So we're blessed that we have a lot of dedicated staff that are willing to try to make this work for the kids. You know, and that's the best we can ask of them.
And I will also add that with class size being reduced, those services that they're getting within the class are going to be more intensive while they're there because they have less people to separate themselves out between.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. Great response. Ms. Abernathy, I think we have a group of your students, too, that we're a little bit more concerned about. Welcome.
So 504 accommodations are designed based on the environment that the student is in for instruction so that they can participate. I just finished a series of meetings with all District 504 coordinators over the last week, and we touched every 504 in the district. We went through the VLA roster, and we looked at the various disabilities that we would be providing accommodations for. And so they generated a list of ideas. If this student has this accommodation in person, this is what they would need and how we could deliver that through VLA. We looked at potential changes given the design of the in-person environment and where students may need different accommodations for that. And then also planning for if a student goes from in-person to NTI, how those accommodations could be delivered. What we are doing right now is doing sort of a triage list of who are the students that we need to meet on very quickly to make substantial accommodations in their plan, and then how we can move through other students who may need changes also. We do a beginning of the year session for teachers every year to help them understand 504 and their role, and we are changing that for teachers this year so that there's some examples in front of them. If I have this child with this accommodation in person, when they move to NTI, this is what that could look like. So we're really scaffolding how we're going to make plans for students now, but also working collaboratively with Dr. Smith on how we're going to do that at VLA. The thing that is different about 504 is the accommodations are all delivered by the classroom teacher. So we have to really look at what types of accommodations fit within that learning environment that can be seamlessly applied depending on where they are instructionally.
Excellent. Did that answer our question, Mr. Woosley?
Parents are involved in this process? Parents are being involved in this process?
They will be when we do 504 team meetings. We absolutely have parents, and for our older students, we have the students involved too. So they can look at, if I'm going to be in VLA, I'm a little nervous about this program, how could I get that accommodation? And we talk to students about how they can get help.
Okay, thank you.
I think in both of your worlds, there are so many individual decisions made, and we trust you and your staff to make those individual accommodations. So thank you, Ms. Abernathy. And do we want to hear from Mr. Johnson? Alec, for your English language learners, the world may look a little different for them this year.
It certainly will. But it's going to look different for all students this year.
Yes, sir.
And I will just echo what Ms. Whitaker and Ms. Abernathy said, which is they're not just my L students, they're all of our L students. They're all our special ed and
Yes.
504s and gifted and talented that Jan's going to talk about. So, and Mr. Woosley, you touched on it's a lot of work for teachers. It's always a lot of work for teachers. All of these responsibilities about all of these plans, and in the ELL world, it's called a program services plan. Those responsibilities fall on the classroom teacher. They don't fall only on a group of special teachers. So, you know, as far as the specifics about AB's schedule, it will look as Mr. Davis explained it. The one exception I think we're pondering right now is if there's a possibility to do for a very special group of newly arrived students to have them come possibly 5 days a week. So that, because they're at the very beginning of English learning, and we just don't think we're going to get there with two and a half times a week. So for those students, we're hoping to have an exception made, if we can work that out logistically. With VLA, the lift is to ensure that accommodations are met, that the instructors working with VLA students know those accommodations and can provide them. We may be looking at, right now we're only at about 21 or 22 English learners across the district signed up for VLA, so it's not a huge number. So I don't know if we're going to assign that to one teacher or if we're going to make that, much like EL teachers in buildings do already, it's a group in their normal rotation in their school. So if there's a handful of students at Crestwood, they might belong to one of the EL staff at Crestwood rather than a separate staff member doing all of VLA. And then with NTI, again, I think sometimes it's handy to think about it as sort of a reduced schedule, like we just sort of compress the schedule of schools. So just like when school's in session, those students belong to the regular teachers. They get extra supports from those, there's differentiation from those regular teachers for those students, but in addition, they have extra supports from an EL teacher or a bilingual aide, and they'll still have those. Hopefully with the lead time we have this year, we can make that certainly more intentional than maybe it was when we first started into that. It was, you know, less, it was a little haphazard when we got into it last year because we had a day to turn it around.
Yeah.
But I think we can be much more meaningful about that. And then finally, we've if we're not in forced shutdown, as Mr. Schultz referenced, where absolutely no one can be in a building, we're hoping again that perhaps we can bring a triage group. My word, no one's been injured. But just bring in the most needy students to continue some learning in person. So, any questions?
Great explanation, and thank you for clarifying. They are all our students.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Do you know how many English language learners we have this year, Alec?
Yeah, we're right around 300 right now. We always have a last-minute rush. I'm hoping that we won't have quite the sizable one this year, but
Yeah.
we're right around 300, so around 2.5%.
Excellent. Thank you. And Miss Janet, speak to us about our Gates students.
I'm very happy to speak about our GATE students and our needs. My team has been in close conversation about what to do for our GT students. Primarily when we're talking about our GT students and we're talking about them virtually, we're talking about managing their acceleration and making sure they're paced appropriately so that they don't just fly through content, but they get an enrichment type of learning. So we do both of those things, though. We accelerate and enrich. And like with everyone else, we have multiple service delivery options as required by KDE regulation. And the main thing, the first thing I guess that we look at is grouping. So we want to ensure that the students are grouped appropriately in whatever setting they're in. So cluster grouping is our first service option that we offer. So as Alec pointed out, they're all of our students, and we provide services in two ways. Through classroom services, so primarily think about differentiation, and then the other form is specialized programming, and that's where we talk about gateway students, and we have all of our middle schools have a dedicated full-time GT coordinator who is also the teacher of those kids to extend and enrich their content as well. So whether it's NTI, VLA, or AB, those are the things we're looking to do. So in AB, just like with the others, it mirrors what we would do if we're in person, making sure that those kids are grouped and have appropriate scheduling. We also want to be sure that we're offering appropriate AP classes for all levels of kids. So that's it in a nutshell. What questions might you have for our GT kids?
Mr. Woosley, any additional questions?
Arvin Center kids, the Gateway, how will that work on an AB? Will they do some at their home school, part of it here?
So elementary come to Gateway, so that's 4th, 5th, so they wouldn't be affected by the AB at all.
What about middle school and high school?
Middle school and high school kids would be on the AB schedule, and they would be following the same breakdown. Half would come on A and B, and they would continue to do their specialized programming. that the middle school teachers have for them.
What does that look like in this building, though?
We don't have middle school students that are getting specialized program for GT here. If they come for Arvin, that would be in high school.
Okay.
And they
Are
would
you
still
going to
come.
have somebody speak on what how Arvin's going to fit into the mix?
Carrie might, and I didn't think to ask Matt to be here tonight, just didn't ring across my bell. Obviously, with what we're trying to do with the live streaming with Arvin, it's going to pretty much operate like a normal high school would. It will not affect their programs per se, it's just going to be a different delivery mode.
I have one question, Miss Janet. So for the Virtual Learning Academy, will we be able to offer those students some gifted and talented resources?
Dr. Smith and I were just talking about that today. We are looking heavily at an advisement type of setting for those kids. As you're astute to, it's all about delivering the GSSP. So the Gifted Student Service Plan is our equivalent to the IEP for special ed. And Alec, what did you call yours? PSP. The PSP. Sorry, I know they have one, but I can't keep track of all of our initials. So we have the same type of expectation by the state to perform and deliver all of these services to our kids. So with 130 students, grades 4 through 12, identified as GT, that's going to be a heavy lift. Because we have appropriate leveled staff at middle school in person. We have them at elementary in person, but VLA is going to be tricky because we don't have extra staffing. So, but we've been talking about how we can manage that. So that's in the works.
Excellent.
I haven't talked about our primary talent pool, but we also have our first through third graders that we will continue to offer services
Yes.
for. And my team, all of them are wonderful. They worked really hard on their NTI plans. As soon as we go into NTI, then they'll communicate their specific plans to their schools. In addition, we have the identification to think about in VLA. So we're required by state law to screen our entire population, so we'll have to set up a means to do that for the VLA students, and also continue with our identification for all those kids that would be on VLA.
Wow. Great response. Other questions, board members? Great job. Thank you, Miss Janet.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here. Were there any other of our invited guests that,
No, we have Ms. Pitzenberger here just in case you all had a specific question about middle and high school. She has been meeting with the principals, I think at least the middle schools today, possibly even the high schools today, as we're working through this, because like everything else, there's a ton of logistics that go into anything that we're doing. And knowing that we'll be better on day 2 than we will be on day 1, and be better on day 3 than we are on day 2. It's just the nature of the beast. It's very, very complicated, but she is here if you had any specific questions.
I think we'll invite Ms. Pitzenberger to join us. This is an item that we are going to take action on tonight, so I think it's important for board members to hear the sentiments of principals and staff regarding the possibility of moving towards the AB schedule.
I certainly think at the secondary level, the amount of contacts every day with class sizes and changing of classes without the AB, without that reduced size, was a huge concern. I feel like this is much more manageable to where hallways will not be jam-packed, they'll have less students, the cleaning in between classes by teachers will be less demanding because you only have 15 to 18 kids. Tables that have to be cleaned, it just seems much more manageable, and even allowing possibly more opportunities for times when they can have mass breaks than if you have, 1,000 to almost 2,000 students, depending on what your high school building is. So it was a, not that their intention and focus is minimized by any aspect, they're still working on all those logistics very diligently, but it was a bit of a relief to say, okay, we have half of our students, half of those bodies, half of the temperature checks to all those logistics were just, it was a relief.
Excellent. Questions, board members? Mr. Woosley?
Yes, sir.
What is like band, choir going to look like? And then some of those special Oldham County had a woodworking.
Good question.
Any of those classes be offered, and what will those look like?
Oh, they'll still be offered. Certainly, we didn't get into the weeds about what it would look like on their at-home day. Certainly, I would assume for at least the performance base, they would be performing their instrument or working on some of their performance if it's theater or art. But they're just glad to be able to spread out because, especially with choir and band, there were so many more added, like you have to have 10 feet of space versus the 6 feet because of how the droplets are being expelled at a greater rate because you're either blowing an instrument or you're singing. So that's a welcome relief as well.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dodson?
How will this affect Kappa also? Will they be moving from there to Kappa because that will lower some of the classroom sizes also?
Yes, Kappa's, all of our programming will have that 50% reduced as well. And when I meet with my high school principals, I meet with Allison Seinecker and Mac McWilliams as well, so they were part of our discussion this morning. And really, the high schools are a find oil machine because whatever our 3 major high schools do, we have to be in step and barrel because it affects what happens at Kappa and Arvin. And so we talked about like if we're changing our bell systems for transitions, that all got aligned so it didn't decrease classroom time at Arvin or at Kappa, so we feel good about that today. I know that Mr. McWilliams is working with Michael Williams about maybe doing some specialized cohorting. We were talking about doing it through households, maybe just based on the type of offering he's looking at Kappa, but that's still in the works.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just had a thought about band, because if we divide the alphabet for A, B.
Households now, remember?
Households now, yes, but here's where I'm going with that, Miss Carey.
Yes.
We could possibly end up with mostly brass and woodwinds on AA alternate Friday, and then just percussion on Tuesday and Thursday. That's just where my mind went with this band discussion.
I was going to say, we've been made aware of that by the band directors. I've got Michael taking a look at it. I can't guarantee that it will work. It's just another layer
Yes.
of complication that we may or may not be able to pull off, but it is on our radar. And if anybody can figure it out in this country with Infinite Campus, Michael Williams can.
I'm not sure that we can figure that out, but it just occurred to me that practices will sound quite different.
And I
But
do-
they'll still practice.
And I know at the middle school, at least at North Middle when I was principal there, Mr. Ray wanted it scheduled that way. Now granted, we had a day where they all came together, but it really allowed for some intense instruction if you just had your percussion or your.
In one
woodwind
area.
class. So we'd have to get creative and, when you have those at home days, you've all seen them, and our kids are smart, like they could get on virtually and create that together. We just have to continue to think
Yes.
outside the box. So how can we include what those days at home look like for band, as well as can we maybe pull them together on a couple afternoons to get them all together? I don't know.
Yes, we will figure that out in Oldham County, I'm quite sure. We have fabulous band instructors in this county, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Mr. Kehoe?
The junior class for the JCTC program, how will that look when the teacher's coming in and instruct?
Another question we have been asked by other parents.
And we're still working on to see how the work with Mr. Williams, the household shakes out, and then we'll have to see, how does that fall? Does it work out to our instructors need to be on certain days because those classes fell, where the households are? It's on our radar, it just hasn't been flushed out just yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms.
Thank you so much.
Pitzenberger.
If I could take this
Yes,
time to
sir.
remind everybody is that the reality is there will be things that we cannot work out, that we will try to our darndest to do the best we possibly can. But I don't want to set people up to be extremely disappointed. We will give our best effort, but there may be things because we are in a bizarre situation with the pandemic that just do not allow us to do business as normal. That's just a reality check for all of us.
We understand. There will be no business as usual this school year. Thank you. Anything else to add, Superintendent? Are we?
No, I think at this time, I think we're supposed to go to public expression.
Yes, sir, we are. If we could let Mr. Williams know.
Could we take like a quick 5 minute?
We can, Ms. Hundley. I would invite anybody who needs a quick break. We will resume in about 5 minutes. Funny if she's the only one that has to take a break.
I like that AV schedule. I like the way you
No, I'm
got
good.
all three of them laid out. Go from here to here, here to here.
Okay, don't agree with
Are we
you.
ready?
You're the chair. So I don't agree with you, you're the chair.
I am going to ask Mr. Woosley to read the guidelines for public expression, please.
Speakers should register by signing the sign-in sheet upon their arrival to the meeting. The board will call upon speakers in the order of which they're signed in. Speakers shall not exceed the time limit allotted by the board. The board will allocate time based on the number of individuals registered to speak. Public criticism of individual staff members and individual board members is prohibited. Concerns about individual staff performance should be addressed with their staff member directly or his or her immediate supervisor or the board chairperson respectively. Public expression is not a question and answer period. Any questions expressed by the speaker will be noted with directives for appropriate administration to follow up. The board, however, reserves the right to respond when appropriate or necessary.
And we will ask each speaker to clean the microphone when they're finished speaking. What's the pleasure of the board for a time limit?
3.
So I've heard various suggestions. We have...
Generous 2.
We have 25 or so persons
27.
wishing to.
27. I'm sorry,
We've had
25,
some
two
changes,
reserves.
Superintendent. At any rate, 2 minutes, 2 minutes allotment, please. So let's welcome the first person wishing to address the board. And if you would introduce yourself, sir. Hello.
Good afternoon. My name is Miguel Medina. I have 2 children. Both went to South. One is at UK already. Been here for 3 years. Moved to the county specifically for the education. So education is very important to me. I work for Boeing. I have 40 years with Boeing in the aviation industry. Again, education is very important to me. So I'm here to advocate for in-person instruction. I've seen both my kids struggle with online instruction. I don't think the quality is there. I know the teachers try to do the best, but again, based on the information that we know what the situation is with COVID. We know the transmission. We know the mortality rate, the infection rate, especially for kids, is fairly low. So again, I think we have to manage the risk. In aviation, we manage the risk on a daily basis. I think we all know, or you should all know as a traveler, there is risk when you're at 40,000 feet going 500 miles an hour. But again, we manage the risk. There's lots of things that can go wrong, but again, it's about managing the risk and not letting what can go wrong overwhelm us and not do the things that we need to do that are beneficial for our kids, okay? So that's what I wanted to come here. I mean, excuse the shorts, it's my day off. But I've been working every single day, going to meet customers, airlines. So for me, again, I manage the risk every single day. This is something that should not overwhelm us, okay? And I would appreciate if you would consider having in-person instruction. I think it would be a benefit for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you for your message, Mr. Medina. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to quit flying commercially now that you have raised that risk level for me. But otherwise, we're on. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. If you would just introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Brian Tellish.
Welcome.
Well, So I just wanted to come down and speak today on behalf of, in-person instruction. I'm a little, I don't want to say blindsided, but very short notice on the AB and the opportunity to actually digest it and have the opportunity as parents to actually understand what's going on. To get dropped an email on a Friday for a meeting on a Monday, I'm blessed. I have a schedule that I can control for myself and that I can be here.
Yes, sir.
And also want to share on behalf of my son, who's a high school student, who's got JCTC on his horizon, and he's very confused on the alphabet splitting and all the other stuff. The kids, and I think there's some students here today that are going to talk too, are very just stressed, confused, and I think that we heard from the presentations today a lot about the staff anxiety of the amount of students and managing things in the hallway and how we're going to handle logistics. And I think the previous speaker talked to the risks. I think most parents who can't be here today because they can't change their schedule have been voting. VLA emails, we do read all the emails, even though we don't respond, and I haven't come to a meeting because I could live with the things that were happening without me expressing a comment. VLA signups probably aren't where y'all want them to be to have the type of class size that we're trying to get out in the end. And I think the presentations today were great, but after 35 years in corporate America, I know that I can come up and justify any decision, good or bad, that I believe in too. I just think take into consideration the mental health of our children. I'm blessed because my wife and I can work around our schedule. Nuclear family, 2-parent home, very strong in academics. I feel sorry for the families that aren't going to be able to manage this if you all go to an AB schedule. And they probably can't have a hard time coming to speak to get off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday with such short notice. I know y'all are going to make a decision today. I just think that it's going to be without a lot of input, and that's really all I wanted to express today, what my concern was. I can't digest the nuts and bolts, and we're making a decision after finding out on Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Talesh.
My pleasure.
The information should be forthcoming on the nuts and bolts, but we appreciate you being here this evening.
That sounds.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
You too. Hello. Would you please introduce yourself for us?
Yes, good evening. My name is Jacob Grant. I'm a senior, rising senior at South Oldham High School. I would like to begin my dissent by thanking the members of the Oldham County Board of Education for giving myself and others the opportunity to express our concerns for education during the COVID-19 pandemic. I have immense gratitude for all the efforts and precautions, not only on behalf of the board, but also from the bravery of our teachers who are choosing to come in for in-person lecturing during this school year. With that, I applaud the motion of the AB school schedule system, but my concerns only account for the execution of such a plan. This being the decision to create the AB schedule system by last name basis. During this pandemic, there has been an ignorance on the increasing teen suicide rate with the context of said circumstances. The psychological sequela of this pandemic will probably persist for months and years to come. Separating students by last name basis per grade level will only perpetuate the psychological impacts of social isolationism, including anxiety, hysteria, and depression, which we have already seen going into the pandemic. Furthermore, since I'm a rising senior, this is my final year of high school. I've lost several opportunities that my predecessors had already been given. This includes my junior prom, probably my senior prom at this rate. I'm also going to be governor at one of the largest conferences in the entire country known as KYA, right? I'm going to lose that too. But on top of that, I'm also going to lose a bunch of friends, right, that I'm going to the school year with, people I used to grow up with for my final year of childhood. Right, so I totally agree and stand for this AB schedule system. I do not believe it's the precaution we need to take as though it separates everyone, which is why I come here proposing a AB schedule system that would rather, instead of separating by last name basis, would separate everyone by grade level and only grade level. It would apply to the same week by week basis of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then the Tuesday and Thursday days that people would come in. But if there's any questions for that, that is up to your discretion. But again, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm hopeful for the outcome of the school year, despite any and all concerns I continuously, actively have. I know it is difficult for all expectations to be met, and I notice and value the process to appease so many individuals. Thank you for your time and stay safe.
Jacob Grant, you did an awesome job. You are going to do a great job with KYA, and we're going to all pray that it goes forward. Yes. And have a great senior year. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's going on next door? Oh, they're clapping for Jacob Grant. Hi there.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're great. How are you? And who are you?
My name's Michael Carroll.
Thank you, Michael Carroll.
I'm a class president and senior at North Oldham High School.
Wow. Welcome, Michael Carroll.
So some students and I have come here today to address concerns that the student body has raised since our voices have fallen on deaf ears. We have attempted to reach out to staff but are not privy to a response. The continuing severity of the pandemic is no secret. I have very much enjoyed the responsibilities of planning school dances and fundraisers. Yet, I understand that that is no longer the reality we live in. This time has passed. Instead of trying to get a chocolate fountain at prom, I've come here to beg for the health and safety of my teachers, family, and peers. The very simple truth that we all understand is when you increase people and proximity, COVID spreads. The decision of this board is much more, it affects much more than just students. It impacts the entirety of Oldham County and the surrounding region. The new way of life is challenging mentally, but I would go through it all again if it meant we could save lives in our community. It should be noted, organizations like Major League Baseball have attempted to reopen while following CDC guidelines. They brought in $10.7 billion last year in revenue. Our budget is 5% of that, less than. Multiple teams have canceled games due to the spread and positive cases being tested. We have nowhere near the funds they do. What is the number one priority of this board? Is it looking after the well-being of students and teachers, or is it reopening schools? We are asking that schools not reopen for in-person instruction so that we can get the quality education from teachers that we know through NTI, just like we did before. The online option is not what I would call school. I have used online learning academies. It is no replacement for a teacher, and that is a fact. When students raised questions because of system errors, we were told to reload the page, which often did not work. I had a teacher who switched his entire class to online learning, and scores fell, and so did class participation. You're asking students to choose between a quality education at high health risk or a poor education with a low health risk. Thank you. Right here are some questions that students have written to me personally that I cannot find answers for. There's multiple copies. If anyone would like one, please
Okay.
put it on the Twitter, anything like that. It'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, Michael Carroll, would you wipe down the microphone for us? Thank you. And I hope that we get to hear you at your senior graduation.
If we have it.
Great job. Well, one way or the other, you're going to graduate. Hello. Would you start by introducing yourself, please?
Hi, so my name is Marty Ely, and I will be a senior this coming year at North Oldham High School.
Welcome. Welcome, Marty.
Before I begin, I want to make it clear that I understand the challenges you face in trying to find a way to provide an education to us students during this time, and I thank you for the hard work and countless hours you have put into finding that solution. Similarly to most of my classmates, I want nothing more than to go back to school on August 24th and experience a semblance of normalcy. I want to see the teachers that I have grown to love and trust over the last 3 years and continue learning about the world from them. However, when considering the current plans laid out by the school board, I have forced myself to recognize that that wish won't come true. When examining both in-person schooling as well as the VLA option, it is evident that both options are riddled with flaws that force students and their families to make near impossible choices. Students may choose to go in person, but at the risk of their physical health due to exposure to COVID. Additionally, the overbearing limitations on learning styles, social interaction, and classroom setup will lead to a further decline in the quality of students' education. Alternatively, students can opt to go into the VLA program, which is in every way inadequate. Forcing VLA students to almost exclusively use programs like Edgenuity is without a doubt going to cause a disparity in the quality of education for students who use VLA versus attending traditional school. As a learning program, Edgenuity in particular is subpar at best. I've used this program for an array of classes throughout high school, and not once has it felt productive. I retained none of the material I quote-unquote learned from that program for more than a week. So hearing that would be the primary learning tool for online students was more than alarming. Beyond the issue of the quality of online learning programs is the overall issue with the lack of inclusivity of VLA. Students whose schedules were supposed to be focused on band or the arts are now left struggling because they can't take the AP art classes they wanted to cater to their personal college applications. As it stands, VLA is not the answer. Despite my personal wish to go to school and see my friends and teachers once again, I suggest an alternative. Similarly to what was done in the spring, I feel as though the best option is to begin the school year with strictly online classes led by our teachers, who the students know, trust, and will actually be receptive of. I and many other students feel this is the best way to keep everyone, whether that be the students or teachers or administrators or parents, safe while maintaining a decent quality education for all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Marty. Nice job. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
If you would use the microphone and begin by introducing yourself, please.
Yes, I have a pre-prepared statement. I hope that's okay. My name is Victoria Havard. I have 2 children enrolled in OCHS. My daughter will be a senior, and my son will be a sophomore. I'm very concerned about the proposed AB Rota type schedule, and I'm not in favor of it, and that's why I'm here today. My biggest concerns are lack of continuity in instruction, lack of peer interaction that students receive during group work, and especially lack of interaction on a day-to-day basis with teachers. All of these factors, I feel, will be detrimental to my children's learning. Now, I hold a master's degree in education from Bellarmine University in language arts, so I feel I have some knowledge concerning how these issues affect student learning. I've been in the classroom, I know what it's like, and I feel strongly that kids need a regular school schedule, not part-time, for appropriate learning to take place. My daughter takes multiple AP classes, and I can tell you that she struggled with virtual learning. Not only because our internet is lousy, it was a disaster, but she needs, even on a good day, but because she was unable to have the face-to-face interaction with her teachers to explain difficult concepts, physics, pre-calculus. My son, on the other hand, is in regular classes, and he perhaps needs everyday instruction with his teachers even more because he needs the support and encouragement that he gets there. Google Meets are extremely difficult and sometimes don't work at all for us. Both of my children have voiced their dissatisfaction with this proposal. They want to go to school full-time. I was actually a little surprised by that, especially when my son said it. But as a parent, I certainly want them to be back in school full-time because I have a schedule of my own. As far as the reports that I've been reading medically daily, I understand that preschool kids and elementary kids are more susceptible to possibly contracting the virus due to their behaviors at that young age. Now, there was a new study that came out today that suggested this. There's a lot we don't know about COVID, but we do know that if we put certain procedures in place, the spread of the virus is greatly reduced. I believe you've been working on those procedures fervently. Face, hands, space.
And Ms. Havard, we are out of time. If you have additional remarks that you'd like to share with us, please do that.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I hate following her. I'm Joel Havard.
Oh, hello, Joel Havard.
Thank you. I would have ceded my time to you, hon, but I didn't know if that was an option.
That was an option.
Oh, man, don't tell her now. We moved here 13 years ago from Virginia and researched very carefully where we were going to live. And we chose Oldham because of the quality of the education that's delivered here. That quality was not delivered virtually. Wife said it, son, daughter both struggled. And I feel like the taxes we pay for the privilege of this school system matters. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We'll get the microphone. Thank you, Brent. Hello.
Hello.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. My name is Carrie Wilson. I teach social studies at East Oldham Middle School, where I'm so lucky to have spent the last 6 years of my teaching career. It's been mentioned that part of Oldham County's plan to stay open for in-person school as long as possible is to go school by school, sometimes classroom by classroom. Does this mean that some schools may begin in NTI while others go in person? What does this mean for families if some classrooms close down while others stay open? Do parents know about this plan? What about the large number of teacher vacancies? We are a district that prides ourselves on making data-driven decisions to determine what is best for our children. What data will we be using to drive these decisions? We can all agree that we are in the midst of a pandemic where nothing appears as normal, and we should stop pretending as such. If we are serious about risk management, then we should heed caution and eliminate in-person instruction. There is zero room for error in a pandemic. Have we reached zero error in our current plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Bethany Schooler. I teach 6th grade science at East Oldham Middle School. I have 8.5 years of teaching experience, and I have served the families of Oldham County for all of those 8.5 years. In the town hall, it was mentioned that the largest factor for not doing NTI is because the district is unsure how to get off of NTI once we get on. What does this mean? Do we not anticipate to go to NTI at some point this year with COVID cases rising? We can all agree that we are in the midst of a pandemic where nothing appears as normal, and we should stop pretending as such. We must let science catch up to our current reality to keep our children and staff safe. If we are serious about risk management, then we should heed caution and eliminate in-person instruction. There's zero room for error during a pandemic. Have we reached zero error in our current plan? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Schooler. Bethany, if you need answers to some of those questions, will you email us, please?
Yes, sure will. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Carrie Hahn, and I'm a teacher in Oldham County. I wanted to share some thoughts that would really I wanted to elevate the voice of other teachers who are scared to speak out. And I want to read a statement from a teacher and resident in the district with children about how they feel about returning in person. So here goes. I'm a teacher and resident in Oldham County, as well as a parent of children that attend school here. I'm also high risk for complications if I contract COVID-19. There are not enough VLA positions for at-risk teachers. I don't want to be in a high-risk lottery for a VLA position and end up being forced into a classroom because a single person thought that I was the least likely to die. Secondly, in my teaching experience, I've seen my students come to school with stomach aches, vomiting, and fevers. Too many times they've refused to go to the nurse because their parents told them not to, because they didn't have a backup plan to keep them home. This has been happening for years, and I have no doubt it will continue to happen in this pandemic crisis. My fear is that Tylenol may reduce a fever enough to get a child through a temperature check, only to spread this virus. This is what I may be forced to face as a result of not being selected for VLA, because really, the only option I'm left with is to resign. How fair is it to force someone to choose their life over their years of service in this career, where being exposed to a virus in a pandemic suddenly became part of the job description? That was a very strong, powerful voice from a teacher that's not tenured, who's scared of backlash from that opinion being shared privately through email or in a public forum. So I wanted to raise that concern, and that's a parent, a resident, and a person whose children go here. So,
Thank you, Ms. Hahn.
thank you.
Hello, Ms. Wasser.
Look at you, Joyce, knowing my name already. Hello, it's nice to see you, and I want to say a special thank you to you, Joyce, and Mr. Woolsey for responding to my emails earlier. I appreciate that.
Sure.
For the rest of you, my name is Pauline Wasser. I am a huge supporter of our schools. Live in the district, have 2 students who have graduated from North Oldham High School, and I have served as a substitute at North Oldham Middle and North Oldham High School for 15 years. I look around and I think I'm one of the oldest people here. I enjoy it tremendously. Okay, there we go, I see you. And still miss not seeing the children. I did have a long-term job at North Oldham Middle, that started in February. So I've had this experience of doing NTI as well as doing multiple other jobs. When I walk into a classroom, I think of those children the way I think of my children. I advocate for them and teach them, as I know we all do, that it is always the right time to do the right thing, and you know that. That's a guiding North Star, I think, for our district. I'm here to advocate that it is the right time and the right place to implement NTI for the beginning of the school year. It just makes so much sense to me. A decision to go with in-person instruction, even the AB schedule, which is an accommodation, and I will grant you that, tells me that we've made peace with students and staff and subs taking the very real risk of becoming sick, causing a loved one to become sick, or worse. I don't know how we make that, I don't know how we do that. Who are you willing to risk? How do we ask kids to live with that risk? What are we telling them about how their lives matter and the lives of our community members matter? Inherent in returning to the classroom is a significant life-threatening and invisible risk. I don't think there's any way around that. A reference was made at the last town hall that there were plenty of subs to go around. I don't think that's accurate from what I'm hearing. As a sub, I have regularly covered for more than one teacher due to a lack of subs. And this is pre-COVID. I think now, how many kids would I be exposed to if I have to cover for more than one teacher?
Pauline, I hate to do this, but we're out of time. Will you share your additional remarks with us via email, please?
I'm almost done, so I will do that. Thank you. Good luck. I do not
Thank
envy
you. Microphone, please.
To be continued, right? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for all you've done in our schools.
Good luck.
Thank you.
She was my long-term sub when I had a baby. She's the best. So
Hi, my name is Brooke Heiser, and I teach English at North Oldham High School. I also have a son who will be entering kindergarten at Harmony this year. This will be my 20th year teaching in public schools and my 8th serving the families of Oldham County. First, I really want to thank you for considering the AB schedule to keep schools at 50% capacity for in-person instruction. This is obviously a better option than 100% capacity, though it doesn't go far enough. Teacher-created NTI is still the only solution to keep all students and staff safe and healthy. At last week's board meeting, you mentioned Greater Clark County as a close district to watch with their reopening. You said their trends would be considered as it relates to reopening schools in Oldham County. 2 Greater Clark County schools have already reported positive student cases within the first few days of in-person instruction. Today, on the 4th day of instruction, a staffer at one of their elementary schools tested positive, and students who were in close contact will have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Similarly, Lanesville Community Schools, only a few miles away from there, had students test positive in the first days of in-person instruction, resulting in close to 50 students having to quarantine for 14 days. And the entire school was online today, mere days after opening for in-person instruction. What are you predicting we will see when we institute in-person instruction in Oldham County? As we have sadly seen this week, we are not immune to the coronavirus here, and we should not act as though we will have different results than other schools in our region. This constant closure of schools or quarantining of students will not provide stability for our families, but instead it will produce chaos. NTI is a much more sensible, stable, and safe option. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, and nothing is normal, and we should stop pretending that it can be. Our goal must be keeping children and staff safe. If you are serious about risk management, you must eliminate in-person instruction. There is zero room for error during a pandemic. Have we reached zero errors in our current plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heiser.
Hello, I'm
Hello.
Bethany Van Epps. I've been a teacher for 13 years at Oldham County for 11, and I've taught elementary, middle, and high school during that time. At the last board meeting, a return to normal for the sake of mental health was discussed. We all want normal, but let's pause to face reality. If I drop my son off to his second grade classroom at Harmony, I am telling him that I am comfortable putting the weight of the world on his shoulders, the burden of a global pandemic. Keep your mask on. No, you're too close. Wash your hands again. No, don't touch your face. Children will be in charge of not spreading this deadly virus. All of this with the knowledge that if a child in the carpool lane has a fever, he will not enter the classroom, but all of his siblings in the car will, as you stated at the last town hall. All of this without ever sharing a hug with his teacher, seeing her smile, or engaging in so many things that make the elementary classroom magical. We are signaling to children that they should do this, but as adults, we know better. Just because you say we can doesn't mean we should. And what of my own high school students, those who are biological adults whose likelihood of spreading the virus is greater? We will ask them to work quietly within a sea of masks. They won't be able to take a drink in my hot classroom. I won't be able to circulate closely to help. No trips to the library, no hugs, high fives. No ease from the daily strain of this deadly virus. Just because you say we can does not mean that we should. And what about me? I have dedicated my life to teaching, and I am high risk. The communication about VLA has been vague, but we know positions are scarce. The consistent responses to my email this summer from the district has been, you can do this. Yes, I can, but that doesn't mean that I should, and it doesn't mean you should risk our lives simply because you hold the power to do it. In a pandemic, there is zero room for error. Are there zero errors in your current plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Epps. Good evening.
Hello.
other logistical concern is teachers assigning oral reports for students with the air hunger with the mask on. If you've got nerves, it's very stressful. My name is Nixby Klingenfuss Slider. I have taught in Oldham County Schools for 20 years. All special educators like myself know Public Law 94-142 by heart that states all kids are guaranteed to a free and appropriate public school education. Nowhere, though, is it written that any child is guaranteed to a free and appropriate babysitting service. While schools do coincidentally provide free childcare outside the confines of a global pandemic, it is not the primary function of the educational system. My heart aches for those parents who are not merely inconvenienced, but truly faced with financial ruin if we do not open. But I fear the ache of reopening too soon would be far greater. My pastor passed away Saturday after a 3-week battle with COVID, so I freely admit that I am emotional and raw, but I wanted to share a few words my pastor last posted publicly. Take this disease seriously, he said. Stay at home as much as possible. Oldham County School Board, I implore you to heed my pastor's words and allow staff and students to stay home to protect our community from the ravages of this vicious virus. Oldham County Schools can provide an imperfect virtual education during these imperfect times. NTI is not the best answer to our ails, but long-term, but NTI is the best answer at this moment in time. Out of respect for you as my leaders, I have tried to remain silent, trusting in my school board to make the hard but right decisions for me, my students, my colleagues, my 3 children, and my community. But here in the 11th hour, I can no longer stay silent. I am alarmed by your current course of action. Erring on the side of caution will bring political heat on each one of you from some segments of our community. But I know each one of you have the strength to shoulder that. But will each one of you have the strength to shoulder the burden of a potential outbreak that costs even just one life? Please, I beg of you to reconsider your decision to proceed with in-person instruction at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slider.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello. My name is Gina Otter, and I am a 4th grade teacher at Goshen Elementary. I have taught at Goshen for 13 years, and I have a unique situation in that I have taught with the same group of teachers for 10 years. Together, my team has 14 children of our own and over 85 years of experience. One of the best parts of being part of this team is that with this experience, we know when a parent nervously drops off their child who struggles socially or academically on the first day of school, we can confidently say, your child is in good hands. Now, teachers within my team and beyond are in a situation where experience does not matter. This situation we are about to get into does not feel safe, and we are scared. Our choices have been reduced to resigning, taking a year of FMLA unpaid, or going back to in-person instruction. But the reality is, our families need our income. Our families need our insurance. Our futures have been planned around our retirement. So for many, we will go back to the classroom because we have to. Obviously, if I had to say, I would choose NTI, but I don't. So I ask for you to advocate for your teachers if we do have to go back to in-person instruction. Advocate for us by keeping our class sizes small. I will start this year with 25 students. 25. That is one more than I had last year. Alternate our schedules too in elementary, A-B schedules, half-day schedules to keep the class sizes small. Make a push for families who can stay home with their kids to opt for VLA so our numbers decrease. Advocate for us by creating a rule that ensures children with mask exemptions must opt for VLA. Advocate for us by creating a virtual option for for all of our at-risk teachers. I ask you to advocate for your teachers to return to a safe environment so we can look parents in the eye on the first day of school and assure them that their child is in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Otter. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Hi. I was going to, I have good afternoon on here, but I guess that's wrong. Thank you for your hard work on this mammoth task.
Mara, will you introduce yourself,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry. Yeah, I'm Mara Ezrins, and for having us to this forum. And I am Mara Ezrins. I teach at Goshen Elementary. I teach 700 approximately students rotating every 5 days. That's 700 contacts for the related arts teachers. I have been an art teacher for 44 years. I know, don't judge. I have served Oldham County for the last 12. I love teaching art and feel passionately about how important experiencing art is for our youth. I want to continue teaching, but I'm at very high risk to teach in person. I am receiving chemotherapy for cancer. I received chemo and radiation most of last year and survived it. But according to doctors, most likely I wouldn't survive COVID-19. I desperately need to teach art via VLA, preferably NTI this year. PPE is not enough to keep me safe. Students learning remotely need art more than ever during these stressful times for their mental health, to be able to express their feelings of anxiety or stress, and as well as their feelings of joy and expression of the beauty in life. Art is so therapeutic. I think I speak for the other high-risk teachers who need accommodations, others like me who want to stay in their beloved professions, who need the income and the health care, and who can't afford to retire. I hope I'm able to teach children in Oldham County for many more years. I also hope we will have treatments and vaccines to conquer this COVID so that teachers and students can return to school safely. Until then, please give our students, teachers, safe options, as we are dedicated, experienced, and valuable public servants that Oldham County cannot lose. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mara.
This is the first time I've been out.
Well, thank you. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Mallory Burzik. I teach at East Oldham Middle. We are gathered here today to mourn a fond friend, the Oldham County School District. For the majority of its long life, Oldham County was known for being at the forefront of education, innovative, progressive, and dedicated to its students. Although it has never had all of the bells and whistles of other districts, it still attracted top talent in the form of committed and passionate teachers. Those teachers filled classrooms with joy and made learning fun for all students. I remember how thrilled I was to be invited into those halls as a young professional, and I was honored to be part of a school system that was the creme de la creme. Several years later, my path took me overseas, and I had to leave my beloved Oldham County behind. However, our paths were meant to cross once again, and I was excited to reunite with my faithful friend during the last school year. Unfortunately, unexpectedly, that friend encountered a never-before-seen virus called COVID-19. At first, it seemed like Oldham County schools would struggle to survive, but it rallied thanks to its administrators, teachers, staff, students, and families. But then summer hit. What should have been a period of recovery and rejuvenation turned out to be a period of isolation and led to a failure to listen to the sound advice of its own experts, the teachers. Another virus had taken root in the heart of this leadership, thereby making the district sick in a way that it had never had been before. And the teachers found it impossible to assist in the recovery. Before we knew it, that failure led to a hemorrhaging that could not be contained. Its very lifeblood, those same teachers who had been ignored, those dedicated experts who wanted nothing more than to save it, began hemorrhaging to other school districts, other professions, or early retirement. The care of something so fragile was too much to bear under the circumstances, and Oldham County schools were never the same. I will miss our old friend more than I can express, and will always mourn what it once was, a place of honor, integrity, and caring. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berzik. Good evening.
So my name is Heather Kirchdorfer, and I teach 8th grade here in Oldham County. Do you know what we educators call our students? Do you know? Do you know what we call our students? We call our students our kids. And just as any of us would do for our own biological children, we educators advocate for our kids. So I'm here tonight as an advocate. We are in the middle of a pandemic that, despite the initial hopes wouldn't affect children, does in fact infect them. Just this morning, a 7-year-old boy was thankfully well enough to be taken off a ventilator in Louisville after spending nearly 2 weeks fighting COVID for his life. Given the absolutely terrifying rising cases in and around Oldham County, it is utterly careless and irresponsible to open in person. Oldham County is in a crisis. And let's be real for a minute. With all due respect, some of the poor choices made by this board are to blame. This district has lost some of the most talented teachers in the state, if not the country, and your reluctance to include them or even hear their concerns as not only professionals but as undying advocates for the kids they love is to blame. You continue to ignore all signs that opening in person is not only foolish but dangerous. How many more teachers are you going to force to resign and leave the classroom full of the kids they love in order to protect their own health before you act? How many more cases of children being infected and even dying have to occur before the members of this board decide to keep them safe? It's not too late. I don't believe for a minute that any of you are on this board for any reason beyond wanting to advocate for what is best for our county's kids. So I implore you to work with us, the teachers, that you still have so that we can all advocate and work together to create a solid NTI plan that keeps our kids safely learning at home.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, how are you? Hello, everybody. I'm Denise Cayley, and I teach at East Oldham Middle School. I'm back because I'm invested. I'm back because I'm a parent. I'm back because I'm a teacher. And I want to be transparent about what I know. And part of what I know is to elevate and talk about the harm to the depth of expertise in this building. AB is a move in the right direction. I applaud the board for being flexible. However, here's what we face based on survey data less than 24 hours old. 15 teachers have applied for BLA. That feels like a small number, but let's think about that for just a second. If they don't get the job, 60% of them are leaving. That is 100 years of experience leaving our schools. 45 years less experience working with our youngest learners. 40 years less experience preparing our students for college. And 11 less working with the awkward, stressful time of middle school. 100 years of expertise, passion, love, and service, gone in a group of 15 people. Let's look at one more number. 35 teachers surveyed stated that we're still considering leaving. If they do, 456 years of expertise in reading, math, special needs, emotional, behavioral instruction is gone. Gone. 106 years of experience in elementary schools, 81 in high school, and 145 in middle schools. Gone. The cost is immense, not to mention to the field of education. I think what upsets me most is there's a large percent who are considering leaving the profession. If they do, the hole they will leave is the size of 316 years of experience. 224 of that will be lost in our county. Now let's consider adding to that what has already been lost. 13 elementary openings, 20 high, and 12 middle. None of these positions are included in the numbers I just gave you. Sit with that for just a minute. The impact to our district and the skill to this flagship high-performing district is unfathomable. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Ms. Cayley. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Angie Palmer. I teach students receiving special ed services and their classmates. I have 13 years of teaching experience, entering my second year here in Oldham County. JCPS Superintendent Polio has stated the weight of possibly having an employee or even a student die as a result of a decision makes it very difficult not to err on the side of caution. Dr. Stack from Kentucky's own COVID task force also stated that the virus does not know county lines. We know parents work in Louisville, as do many of our teachers, including myself. I commute there every day. We cannot only look at Oldham County data when making decisions. Superintendent Polio also stated that he is not willing to risk lives, any lives. We know that if we open, COVID-19 will enter our school district. Are you willing to accept the consequences that those decisions have? Are you willing to lose lives? Any lives? We can all agree that we are in the midst of a pandemic where nothing appears as normal, and we should stop pretending as such. We must let science catch up to our current reality to keep our children and our staff safe. If we are serious about risk management, then we should heed caution and eliminate in-person instruction. There is zero room for error during a pandemic. Has our plan reached zero error? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. Would you wipe up the microphone, please? Thank you. Hello, welcome. Do you happen to be Mr. Harris?
Yes, that's me.
Tyler Harris, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Harris. I teach math at North Oldham High School. I have 8 years of experience in teaching, and I've served the families of Oldham County for the past year. A reduction to 50% capacity for in-person is a step in the right direction, but the teachers of Oldham County still have many unaddressed concerns about in-person instruction. In the town hall last week, it was stated that if 10 students get COVID, we would not necessarily shut down a school. We would like to know what is the number of COVID cases that would require a shutdown. We've already seen the greater Clark County schools in Indiana forced to close abruptly after the first week due to multiple cases among students, and this should serve as a warning sign for us. In the same town hall, it was stated that if 10 teachers get COVID or were absent, then school may shut down if even for the day. Are parents aware that specific classrooms and schools may be shut down with little notice? Can you please explain how we will operate a building knowing we may have exposed the staff and students to multiple positive cases? Mental health concerns have been repeatedly cited as motivation for reopening. However, frequent and abrupt changes to routine, along with concerns about contracting COVID, will almost certainly exacerbate these mental health issues among students and staff. By your own accounts, there will be no business as usual this school year. We can all agree that we are in the midst of a pandemic where nothing appears as normal, and we should stop pretending as such. We must let science catch up to our current reality to keep our children and staff safe. If we are serious about risk management, then we should heed caution and eliminate in-person instruction. There is zero room for error during a pandemic. Have we reached zero error in our current plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Good evening.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Ferry. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you guys today. I have a daughter who attends Oldham County schools. My family and I moved to Oldham County 2 years ago from Jefferson County. We didn't like the future options of the education in Jefferson County. That's why we moved to Oldham County. She will be entering 6th grade this fall. She's excited about her experience and how it's going to change when she gets in the middle school from her elementary school experience. She obviously misses her friends and is looking forward to seeing them. She's also looking forward to making new friends. I'm here to respectfully request that you vote against the proposed AB and/or NTI schedule at the start of the school year. Here are my reasons why. Parents have spoken. Trust that they have made the best decision for their child and their families in having them enrolled in VLA or in-person instruction. Preparing packets of lessons by teachers is an undue and unnecessary burden to them and to the children and their families. Last year when we went to NTI, my daughter was doing work. I didn't know how to help her. And it was challenging to get in touch with her teacher. So families who may have more than one child will find it difficult to keep up with, as well as manage other pressures they are dealing with, especially economic uncertainty many face. Difficulty for parents to keep up with the schedule from week to week. I heard someone earlier talking about Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, every other Friday. I can't keep up with it. So even though we know that the risk of contracting this virus is very low in Oldham County, the risk of dying from this virus is extremely low and most often affects those with compromised immune systems. This is also a teaching moment to help our young people understand the importance of caring about others, following instructions, and adhering to policies. The real world is full of rules and laws that we all must face and follow as a civilized society.
Ms. Ferry?
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. If you have additional remarks, I would welcome you to
Okay.
email them to us.
All right, thank you.
And we thank you for being here.
Okay.
What school does your daughter attend, Ms. Ferry?
She will be in Oldham County Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello again. How are you guys?
Good.
I'm Rebecca Gordon. I have taught for 17 years in Oklahoma, Virginia, before relocating here in Oldham County, Kentucky, due to my husband's relocating with this company. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, Joe Austin, Carmen Canellis, Anthony Harrell, Craig Drozek, Andre Lewis, Tim Hollern, George Santiago, Gerald Gleason, Jennifer Romaine Hines, Emma Fulta, Matthew Ian Johnson, Edward LaTourette. I have more names that I could read, but for the sake of time, I will spare you. Those are the names of educators and others who have worked in public education. They were in their mid-40s, and they loved working with kids. Any one of these beautiful people could be me. They all died of COVID-19, doing what they love and what I love to do, and that's to teach kids. So ultimately, my life along with every other OC students and employees are ultimately in your hands. Let's proceed with caution and be proactive in our decision making. We have the power to prevent the unthinkable. One death is one death too many. As I stated last week, an AB plan will work only if infection rates are down. We are surging. And again, we are not there yet. Please allow us, the teachers, to put our oxygen mask on first. If we do so, we will in turn save the lives of our students. Please consider NTI to begin our next school year. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Good evening.
Evening. Hi, my name's Adam Kestner. I'm a parent of two children, both in South Oldham Middle School. One's 13, one's 11. One has autism spectrum disorder and is extremely low functioning. My other son has ADHD. We're super excited about the Virtual Learning Academy for my son with ADHD. He actually really progressed during his NTI instruction and being able to work with us at home. My real concern is for my one with autism spectrum disorder. Although he's 13, he's developmentally about 7. He has to be monitored 24 hours a day. We have locks on our house. He can't go outside without being supervised. So our home is more of a prison to him than it is a place of comfort, for lack of a better term. Breaks in his daily routine really cause a hardship for him. The NTI instruction started to give him frustration, which led to anger, depression, aggression, eventually property damage and personal harm. I've got about 9 holes in my hallway of my house that all started the second week of NTI instruction. 3 weeks into it, we had put him into the hospital for several weeks so that he could get some help with his emotions. These kids in the special needs classroom are in a classroom with about 6 kids and 3 adults. Very easily social distance that group of kids. They don't change periods, they don't switch in and out with other kids. I think missing instruction or even the AB instruction for these guys is really going to hurt them emotionally and developmentally. For a lot of these kids, their only friendships are the relationships they have in school, and they're really missing out on them. So I hope you take that into your consideration. I really appreciate the comments you were making for our special needs students, and I appreciate that a lot. And I hope you take that into effect when you make your vote tonight.
We have the exact personnel here that needed to hear your message. Thank you, Mr. Kestner.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. All done and all done. Thank you, Mr. Williams. So this concludes public expression this evening. Are we good to roll, board members? Additional questions or comments?
I do
Ms.
have
Hundley.
a couple of questions. Mr. Kestner and I went to school K through 12, so he holds a special place in my heart, to say the least, and so does his son. Always hugs me when he sees me at South Oldham Middle School. He's lovely. I did have a couple of people send in and were asking, in the, for example, the FMD rooms where they don't switch out, and you have kids that are in there, is it possible, I know we talked about some of the ELL and doing something special, but would it be possible that those kids attend Monday through Friday versus just on an AB schedule?
Ms. Whitaker, if you want to address that.
I think it's good that we ask the question, and maybe Ms. Whitaker and her department can assess the possibility of that. Any preliminary thoughts, Nikki?
Yes, and so that is a conversation that we have started today, actually, with Ms. Corson and KDE as well. We do not have a definite answer on how that will work out, or if that will be able to work out. I will go ahead and just add that our highly structured classrooms, while they are small numbers, those students lack sometimes personal boundary awareness. And so while you would think it would be easy to social distance in those classrooms, those are the very classrooms that we have a lot of concern about keeping our students social distanced and safe. Those are also classrooms where we may see less mask wearing due to sensory needs if doctors sign that form where they would not have to wear a mask. And so those are all concerns that go into that classroom as well. So that is an ongoing discussion, but it is one that we're having.
Yes.
Thanks.
We appreciate your response and your willingness to investigate that particular issue. Thank you, Ms. Hundley. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Woosley?
A few questions before you call for the question. And probably for the superintendent or one of the assistants, but...
Kevin, you got to use your mic a little better, honey.
Okay, that's better. I'm still a little bit confused and would like to understand how we're going, what's going to trigger us to go from an AB schedule or an in-person schedule into NTI?
So it's multifaceted. There's not one specific number. It could be due to community spread. And I'm looking at the numbers right now, the total number of OC cases from 7/15 through 8/2. I do not have today's numbers yet. We went from a community spread of a 14-day average of approximately 23.14, and we're now down to 18.14 on 8. That was based on 8/1. On a 7-day average, we were initially in July at 33. We had a couple of really high days. We are now on the last 7-day average, once again based on 8/2 data, at a 12.28. The last 4 days have been, or the last 7 days have been 9 yesterday, 13, 12, 12, 15, 6, 19, and 10. So that's one factor. The other factor is going to be how it looks in the schools. If we have students testing positive, we have been told by the health department, public health, the state, that may not necessarily trigger a complete shutdown. It could be a shutdown of a school. It could be a shutdown of one class. It could be a shutdown of just one school and not necessarily the entire district. There is not one single simple answer that I can give to that question because it is very much, as our lawyer often says, fact-based or based on the facts of the particular case. We're going to look at numbers every single day, obviously. Part of this could be, and the governor has been talking about this, at the positivity rate at the state, something around 5, which is, if it goes too high above 5, that there's a problem, and that then may call for a shutdown of the schools. That would not be necessarily triggered by myself, but triggered from above. So there's just a lot of different factors that go into that. A shutdown could occur that if we have so many kids quarantined or so many teachers quarantined that we can't function as a school. We've had that concern about, will there be enough subs? On paper, there are enough subs. Will they come in? We don't know until we call them. We do believe that there may be times when we can even flip-flop some teachers that are not medically fragile out of VLA into the regular classroom, specifically at the elementary level, because that's where they're certified at. But if we needed to, maybe elsewhere, is possible subs as well. I don't have a great answer for that. No one has a great answer for that. But those are the things that we'd be looking at as we'd have to make that determination.
I would just think as a parent, you're left with so much uncertainty, not knowing if tomorrow my classroom or my school may be shut down, and then what am I going to do if we're in an AB or full-time and face-to-face instruction. So that's why personally I think if we're in NTI, at least you would know what to expect for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Because right now, if we're in face-to-face, we wouldn't know what it's going to look like tomorrow if you have one case that you'd have to shut down a classroom for.
And I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but that is going to be true all year long.
Right.
Whether we're in NTI to start the year, NTI in the middle of the year, NTI at any point of the year, that's a little bit more out of our control. The bigger reasons for doing the AB scheduling and looking at the VLA at the elementary level is to keep the class sizes more manageable. We think it's our best, if we're in in-person instruction, we figure that's our best deterrent to having to go out. It's going to be easier to contact trace because there'll be less numbers. It's going to be easier to manage. Nothing's going to be easy to manage. It does, for the most part, follow CDC guidelines on trying to lower class sizes. You know, I don't have any great answers because there are only tough questions and there are no great answers in all this. I can't guarantee you, and you're exactly right, that we in school on a Friday and something happens and we aren't back in school on Monday. Just have no way of telling that. You know, if you're talking about sure consistency, the only thing that's consistent is NTI with nobody within classes, because then you're just not going to have anybody in classes. But is that the best option? And we have battled this demon all summer long, and even though there are risk involved in in-person instruction, you know, the Dr. Stack has said, he said on the town hall for staff that this is the ways they have to deal with this are a lot of inconvenience as far as hand cleanliness, mask, social distancing, and it is a dangerous virus. He goes, but he had said the risk of not having face-to-face instruction is far greater than having face-to-face instruction. Now, I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm a superintendent that's wrestling with this like every other superintendent in the state. I have limited numbers in which I can go on, and those are the numbers I shared with you today. You know, that's the best we possibly have, and that's about all the guidance we're going to get from anybody above me at this point.
I think that's a good statement, Superintendent.
It's the easiest route, but it's not the safest route. And that's my concern, is we're not looking at the safest route, which is not having face-to-face instruction at the moment. And I just want to say this to the board members. Over the last 5 or 6 years, we've spent $10 million building up our school buildings to block from some type of exclusion, some exterior threat for our buildings. And now we have this, and we know it's here. We know it's in our community. We lost a very popular pastor this weekend because of it, and we're going to be a Lanesville. We're going to open up and then have to go into MTI. There's no doubt in my mind, and I don't know why we wouldn't focus all of our efforts right now on just building the best MTI program we can. We know it's safe, and we know we can do it. So that's my thought there.
I appreciate you sharing your concerns and your perspective, Mr. Woosley. I think that I have been convinced that the best that we can offer our students to begin this school year is to offer in-person instruction with the virtual academy option. We have heard from so many families and so many students who really want their students back in school, and I continue to maintain that we can do it safely if staff and students follow the guidelines that have been established. I know in my own profession that not only are healthcare workers continuing to go to work every day, but so are all the ancillary staff, food services, custodians, assistants have gone to work every single day in those very high-risk facilities and remained healthy. One of my dearest friends is an oncologist who has gone to work every day and taken care of COVID patients every single day, and they have stayed safe and healthy. It can be done. And so I believe that we won't know until we try in-person instruction, and that's my position. I'm going to support the recommendation.
I've got a comment. The one thing I want to comment about, after hearing the plan, the options we have, I think the plan is laid out where if we need to jump from one to the other, we can move. It's just, I mean, when you go in and just say we're going to have in-person and VLA, then we're hung. But when you got a plan that says, well, we can go to NTI, we can go to AB 100%, we can rotate that to fit our needs when we need to.
Yes.
And that's what I like. I think this is, to me, this could be the final plan that we have to vote on because it covers all the aspects, NTI, VLA, AB, 100%.
Well, and actually, we have already approved the item to go in person and offer virtual learning academy, so that is really not, we are really not here to discuss whether that item is on the table. We are here to discuss moving towards an AB schedule. We can continue to process, and I know that we will. I know our district administrators will continue to watch data every single day, multiple times a day. We all watch that data. We all read the news as fervently as we can, and we, I think, are flexible enough that we will do what's necessary. But for right now, the item on the table right now is to approve an AB schedule. Any other thoughts, concerns? All right, Superintendent, I'm going to call for the action item, sir.
If I could just back up just a little bit, because
Yes.
I want to be exceptionally transparent. Many of the teachers have talked about staff leaving. We are facing some staff deciding that they do not feel comfortable in this environment and that this is not the work that they want to do. And I don't have an answer for that, besides I've made mention several times that people have to make their personal choices. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that the virus is forced us to do that. And once again, it goes back to, do you keep them if you go NTI? But at some point, I would hope that we could go back somehow to face-to-face instruction. And so if they're not willing to go back now, would they be willing to go back in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 24 weeks? I don't know. And we can't function as a school system with that lack of clarity. I mean, it's hard enough to try to figure out how we're staffing VLA with additional funding, a lot of additional funding, and how to staff all these other options when there's not some type of clarity. You know, I concur with Mr. Woosley that is the possibly lowest risk as far as actually contracting within our buildings. But we all know, and we've got some sports programs going on right now, and we've had some kids test positive, and we've had some coaches test positive. They weren't within our buildings. They're testing positive out in the community, and I don't like it. I hate this disease. I hate this disease as much, if not more, than everybody else. The CDC, which I'm assuming is a lot smarter than I am, says that when you do these things that they've laid out, they feel like live instruction can occur. I cannot guarantee that people will not catch the illness. I can't guarantee that. I can't guarantee that people will not get sick. I can't guarantee that. I couldn't guarantee that last year either, whether it was a flu or whatever it was. We talked about this all the time with, we put, as you mentioned, millions upon millions of dollars into making our buildings safer. But even that, I can't guarantee that someone intent on doing harm can't come in and do harm. It would be just limited. I don't have all the answers. I think we're working on these every single day. I know that, if we go NTI, we don't go NTI, that may be forced upon us before this month is even out. It may be forced upon us by the numbers before this month is out. The inconvenient truth is today, with these numbers, I don't know that I would say go NTI. That doesn't mean that couldn't change in a week. And that's going to put parents in a very, very hard spot. And so, weighing this on a nightly basis, we have conversations every single day. You can ask anybody in the room, except Ms. Anderson. We've kind of kept her out of this because it's the financials. I just keep telling her the bill's coming. That we have these discussions every single day. We're operating on the best information we possibly can. I'm doing things in education that I shouldn't have to do, but every superintendent is doing. I'm having to make decisions that no one likes to make. But if we are trying to hear, and I've got teachers that have emailed me and said, Mr. Schultz, we believe that we can stay safe and we can do instruction. And they're not necessarily coming here, and I don't beleaguer anybody that is coming here. I respect everyone that came tonight and spoke because that's very challenging to do, and I have zero problem with that whatsoever. People keep saying that they're afraid of retaliation. I don't know who they're afraid of. I hope it's not me, because I've never held anything against anybody for speaking their mind. That is their American right in which to do so. But I cannot foresee, if we go on NTI, whenever we go on NTI, we have to have a plan to come back. The best plan to come back is AB, because it does minimize the risk. I don't know that we'll ever get to full instruction this year with 5 days a week. I cannot guarantee that. And I want to be very clear about that. There's not many good decisions in all of this. And so, even though, and I respect our staff, I know they don't think I care about them at times, but that's not the case. But when it comes down to it, there are a lot of staff that have emailed me and said, for my own children, I need to be back face to face for their instruction, for their mental well-being. It's a bottom line, it's a no-win situation. I'm not looking at popularity. I'm not looking at who can pull on my heartstrings anymore. The best decision right now that I have at my disposal is starting at an AB schedule for middle and high school, with elementary, the VLA pulling out. And there's some spots that we're going to have to work on a little bit. We had some teachers from Goshen, and Goshen's not pulling out nearly as many kids. They're still at about 89.5. And so that principal might be able to do something with internal staffing in which to work on that. We're trying to figure out, there is no playbook for this. There are no good answers. We're trying to do the best we possibly can to ensure that we can provide some type of instruction for our kids. And it's going to be rocky all year, and anybody that thinks it's not, I think you're wrong. It's going to be tough. It's going to be rocky. It doesn't matter what we do. We will be second-guessed every decision that we make. But the only decision right now that makes any sense for the whole entirety of the system, the entire system, I don't have the luxury of just listening to parents. This is not a popularity poll. I don't have the pleasure of just listening to teachers. I don't have the pleasure of just listening to students. I have to look at it all and talk to the people around me, and the only decision that we can kind of come up with, and we had this discussion all day long, was about NTI and about the AB schedule and about the full schedule. And so the recommendation for me would be that we would start with an AB schedule at this time. In a week, that could change. My commitment is to look at the numbers and adjust quickly as needed. And that's the best we can possibly do. And that's why I make that recommendation.
So point of clarification, you are not making the decision, Superintendent. You are making the recommendation.
I'm making the recommendation.
We share that load because we will make that decision. So thank you.
I just want to respond where you said you know you're not going to keep staff and students from getting it, but we can stop them from at least getting it from the schools. If they're going to get it out in the community, if they're going to go to the fair, that's on them, but we can, at least as a school district, say you're not going to catch it in our buildings.
I think that is a correct statement.
And as a parent, I'm just concerned what we're doing for those families who we're all of a sudden going to toss them in at the very last minute and say, tomorrow we're going to be on NTI, or next week we're going to be on NTI. And they're scheduling now, well, we're 3 weeks out, so they're planning on kids coming to school. And what are we going to do when middle of the week we say we can't do it anymore, we have to go to NTI? At least if we knew we were going into it, they would have some time to plan, instead of in the middle of the week or on a Friday saying next week you're going to have to find somewhere to do with your kids because they can't come to school.
And Mr. Woosley, I understand that, but I want to echo that could happen at any time of the year.
That's why I'm saying I feel very strongly that we should switch gears and put all of our resources toward just building the greatest NTI we can, knowing at some point we're going to anyways between now and the end of the school year. We don't have to stay in it, but we could start there, and if something happens and our rate goes down here in Oldham County, we can plan on coming back into an AB schedule, but
that's just it, Kevin. The thing that I think is important to keep in mind is everyone that's crying NTI and screaming NTI, they want it, but they want it for the whole school year. Because in reality, if you're not willing to go back into a classroom right now, are you going to be willing to do it in 4 to 6 weeks? if that's what we say, and we're going to watch the numbers, and if the numbers go down, then we're going to go back to in-person. So it's either, you can't have it both ways.
I haven't heard that at all. None of the speakers tonight said NTI all year long. Let's start with NTI. Everybody said, let's start with NTI. I haven't heard anybody ever tell me that's where I want to stay at all year long.
But I don't think if you're willing to go back now, that in 4 to 6 weeks, if the number's down, I would be surprised if that changes their situation or their feeling about going back to school.
And there's one other factor that, once again, for transparency, is that there is a date coming up, August 9th, that puts you 2 weeks from the outside of school, and by state law, teachers are not supposed to get out of their contracts at that point. And so teachers are going to have to make that choice, and I was very clear with that. It's, once again, it's not me trying to be nasty, it is the state law. We've had that state law in effect since I've been superintendent and well before that, and I've held people to their contracts because we're expecting them to be within the classroom. One of the other things we talked about having to go to NTI is if we don't have staffing. And I can't answer that right now because it's not the 9th of August.
Yes, and so I'm going to pull this conversation to a closure. We've shared some serious concerns, and I'm going to bring us back to the action item at hand for tonight. We will continue to communicate with you, Superintendent, and so now I'm going to ask you what your recommendation is, sir.
I recommend that we start the school year on an AB schedule for middle school and high school and elementary. And like I said, we may have to look at individual schools and principals getting creative with how they possibly can tweak.
All right. Motion to approve action item, it should be action item, it's action item B. Motion to approve, please.
Well, just so we can be clear, you lumped in elementary with that.
Only on some individual classes. I mean, Goshen, I'm looking at the numbers. Goshen is pretty big, and so there may be, I don't know if they've got the physical space to do it, but if there's a way to help them with their numbers, we will try to do that as well. But I'm not looking at a complete AB for an elementary right now.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, good point. So do I have a motion to approve, please? Motion made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 4. All those opposed? And that's 1. Your recommendation now, Superintendent.
Recommend to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Thank you, everybody.